It's so wonderful to see your smiling faces. Definitely. Now, how many of you, who wasn't here last night? Are there any new people here? Okay, I see a few people. Have you tried your stress cards? Do you like those stress cards? Are you stressed?
No.
Whoa. Oh, well, what are you doing here?
Depression, though.
The depression. Okay, then. You know, I love those stress cards. I just, anytime I'm in a situation that I'm feeling somewhat stressed, I just pull that card out and say, well, you know what? I think this is a stressor for me. So you're going to love those cards. Tonight, we're going to talk about depression. And depression, there really is a way out of depression. Oftentimes people feel that once they're depressed, they're always going to be depressed. Now, last night we talked about stress. And stress can lead to depression. So what I want to do is, with the slides, I want to try to balance out the slides, because when you talk about depression, it's a depressing topic. And we have in our brains what is called mirror neurons. Have you ever heard of mirror neurons? You look in the mirror and you see your face. Now, we've all experienced this. You are going to a funeral. You go to a funeral. You don't even know that person. Maybe your coworker, their spouse died or someone died in their family. And they invite you, you come for support. And you're sitting there and you see everyone sad and crying. And doesn't that make you feel somewhat sad? You might even shed some tears. Well, we have what is called mirror neurons. And we reflect our environment. So if I put up pictures all night of individuals that are depressed, I don't want you to go home feeling depressed, okay? So what I'm going to do is just balance it out with some smiling faces. People who are engaged, people who seem to be content and happy in life. Now, if you take just a few of the tools that I'm going to share with you tonight, I believe that you will see a dramatic improvement in your health. And now, you're here for depression. You might not be depressed. Perhaps there's someone in your family that's depressed, and this information you can share with them to help them break the cycle of depression. Now, here I have 3 groups of women, and there are 4 in a group. The top women are somewhat depressed, and on the bottom, these ladies are happy, they're smiling, and they're engaged. And the statistics show that 1 in 4 individuals suffer with some type of mental illness. It could be schizophrenia, bipolar disease, a major depression, post-traumatic stress syndrome, anxiety. All of those are classified as mental illnesses. But we're going to talk specifically tonight about major depression. And I want you to know that it impacts every aspect of our lives. Now, the statistics show that by the year 2020, that major depression will be the leading cause of disability here in the United States. And that's pretty significant. Also, 80% of people who are suffering from depression, they never receive any help. Now, why would people suffering from depression not go for any help? Well, it's a stigma. It's a stigma involved in depression. Now, if I ask you guys to raise your hands, and please don't, if you've ever had any mental illness, how many of you would raise your hands? One person. you know what? I appreciate that. Because most people would not. And you know what? 54% of Americans who do not suffer from depression, they see it as a sign of weakness, a sign of personal weakness. So we have to drop the stigma regarding depression. Now, when you're depressed, oftentimes people will say, you know, just snap out of it. Why you can't be that bad? What's wrong with you? You know, just pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Don't we hear that? And then people who are depressed, oftentimes, they see people whispering. You know, you hear people say, you know, that person's a little, something's going on there. Or, you know, I didn't think that their elevator went to the top floor. We hear those type of comments. And that's why many people don't get treatment. Depression is a real disease, just like someone having a heart attack, okay? Someone that has diabetes. Now, if I said, you know what, the person that has diabetes, you know, you really don't have diabetes, you just think you're diabetic. You know, if you will just pull yourself up with your bootstraps, that blood sugar will just go right on down. Or someone who has heart disease, you know, those arteries aren't really clogged. You know, every time you have chest pain, just perk up, and those arteries will expand. You know, we have the wrong concept. We have to get rid of these stigmas that we have. And we're telling people to just get on with life. Now, a person who has cancer, okay, there's an outpouring of sympathy, cards, you're there, you're volunteering to help that individual, you know, because you want to ease their situation. You know, you want to make it lighter on them. And that's the right thing to do. Someone breaks their arm or their leg, you know, everyone's there to sign that cast. But when it comes to a disease that affects the brain, it's a totally different story. And we have to change that. We have to change that. Now, major depression is an incapacitating, devastating disease. It wreaks havoc on you financially, on your job, on your family. It is one of the most difficult diseases to work with, because with these other diseases, someone who has cancer, you know, you can look at the lump. You can see it on the CT scan. You can do the biopsy. Someone who has diabetes, you can measure the blood sugar, and you can see that. You can see the damages in that person's body. But when it comes to the brain, people feel it's all in your head. And it was not until just recently that we were able to see changes in the brain with PET scans. And it is a real disease. And we will see that there are things specifically we can do, that are lifestyle changes. Now, I want to tell you a little bit about where we are, decreased frontal lobe function, and we'll get to that a little later. But for right now, I just want to tell you, when you look at the depressed brain right here on my right, you see that there's not a lot of activity. When you look on the left, a person that's not depressed, there's a lot of, you see that yellow? You see that? There's a lot of activity there. So individuals who are depressed, they have functional changes in their brains, and you can see that, and it's in the prefrontal lobe. And that's the area that we're going to look at later on and see how we can improve the frontal lobe function. Now, as I said last night, I've been a nurse for over 25 years, and I've worked in just about every aspect of nursing, including psychiatry. So I've treated patients with all types of mental illnesses, and also I have suffered from major depression. And so what I'm sharing with you tonight, I know about because I've experienced it. And I know that the principles that helped me to come out of my depression will help you and also your loved ones. So we're going to look at the anatomy of depression, look at changes in brain chemistry, look at the signs of major depression, and then we're going to look at some evidence-based research that shows that you can change the function of your brain and be able to have depression something of the past. So I'm going to start with Darlene's story, my story. And this is a picture of me on the left of about maybe 10 years ago. And this is a picture of me, oh wow, I was about 18 during that time. And as you can see, it's not a very good picture. You know, I'm just staring. It was just, I was like in a fog. It was like the lights were totally out. And if you see someone who's majorly depressed, there's no light in that individual. And that's how I was. So how did I get to that point? And so I'm going to use my story to give you an analogy of how depression can start. Now, I was in my first year of college, and I was about 500 miles away from home for the first time. And the question is, what was I doing in college in the first place? You know, that's the question that was asked of me. And the reason being is because when I was when I was in elementary school, I was considered to be someone who was really stupid. They didn't think that I could learn. You know, when the teachers wrote on the blackboard, I didn't see what everyone else saw. You know, to me, it was just like scrambled alphabets. I didn't see what they saw. And so I was labeled as being stupid, that I would never amount to anything. And in order to prove my stupidity, my teachers placed me and the other stupid kids in front of everyone, and we would wear these big yellow dunce hats. Have you ever heard of those dunce hats? Yeah, so we paraded around, and we had to stand up like we were in an AA meeting. You know, my name is Darlene Hall, and I am stupid. You know, now, when you say something over and over and over again, guess what? You believe it. So I grew up believing that I was stupid and I was incapable of learning anything. So in my first year in college, I'm sitting in my class and I'm having flashbacks of what happened then. And so I was not really engaged. I couldn't really understand or really couldn't concentrate on what the teacher was talking about. Well, needless to say, I did not do very well in my first year of college. In fact, I was taking Bible, and I got a big fat F in Bible. Who gets F's in Bible? I did. Well, you know, when you're in college, that's the time that you're starting to date, you know, you want to experience having the other individuals attracted to you. You know, the girls in the college, they were talking about, oh, this person asked them out, and that person, and he said this, and they said that, and what they're going to wear, and all that kind of stuff. And nobody ever asked me out. And I couldn't understand that. But you know what? The reason is because I didn't feel good about myself. And when you don't feel good about It shows. But why did I not feel good about myself? Well, I was bullied and teased horribly as a kid. And I was told that I was the most hideous looking person on the face of the earth. And when you hear something over and over again, what happens? You start to believe it. Well, I couldn't talk to my parents because my parents divorced. So my grandparents raised me and my sister and my brother and another cousin. And that cousin just happened to be, they called it back then a crackhead. She was heavily into drugs. And so I lived in this chaotic home. Her father, now she was several years older, probably about, I think she was 8 or 9 years older. I was, when I went to live with my grandmother, I was about 8. And her father was in jail. And her father was in jail because he killed 2 people. At least that's what the story was. My father was an alcoholic, and he went to jail too. And my mother, she packed up and she left. And she went 500 miles away, and I didn't see her for about 18 years. So, I guess many of you are thinking, what kind of family did she grow up in? Well, we made headline news. There was never a dull moment. Now, I tell you this. Now, let me just tell you, my uncle did not kill anyone. He was in jail for 20 years, and they released him because it was proven that he was innocent. And so they paid him this money, blah, blah, blah. But anyway, he was in jail for 20 years. So I tell you this story to show what happened to me and what the science says. Now, the study, there was a joint study done by the Centers for Disease Control and Kaiser Permanente, and it's called the Adverse Childhood Experiences. And this study followed 17,000 individuals for 15 years, and they looked at various factors to see what was going on in these individuals' lives to cause them to become sick. And so there are 8 categories they looked at: emotional abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse, household substance abuse, household mental illness, incarcerated household member, parental separation, which is divorce, and a mother that is treated violently. Now, the study went on to say that if you have at least 4 of these events, that you're going to come down with some type, more than likely, some type of physical or mental illness. It says here, the hidden epidemic, the impact of early life trauma on health and disease. Taking a closer look at the relationship between traumatic childhood experiences and psychiatric disorders, the results suggest that early childhood trauma is a strong predictor of mental health issues. And it goes on to say, according to what score you have, the higher your probability of coming down with multiple different types of illnesses. Now, we're talking about just major depression tonight, but I had over 18 different types of medical issues by the age of 18. So this study is spot on. Now you might say, well, Darlene, I grew up in a wonderful family. You know, there was no violence. You know, my parents adored me. I had wonderful teachers. I didn't have any of those issues. And I'm still depressed. Well, then there are other factors that can cause depression. Now, your genes. We have DNA. We get 23 from my mother and 23 from my father, so we have a total of 46. If they have depression, you know, you have that genetic predisposition. not that you will come down with it. Development, which is the A study trauma that occurs early in your life. We talked about that. Lifestyle, and lifestyle, we'll get more into details about that. Addictions, drugs, alcohol, drugs and alcohol. Nutrition, a bad diet. We talked a little bit about diet last night. Toxins in the environment, they can also cause depression. Social and situational stressors. Now, social, individuals who are lonely, they have no one to engage with. Loneliness can be a stressor. Plus, situational stressors such as losing your job, losing your spouse, a divorce, those can also trigger depression. And then medical conditions, and we'll get a little more into detail about that, and a frontal lobe. So the frontal lobe is spot on for trying to reverse that. The same with the A study. The A study, you have to have at least 4 of those 8 in order to come down with some type of mental illness or a physical disease. With this, there are 10 areas here, and also you have to have at least 4. You can have 2 or 3, and the probability of coming down with an illness, you're more resilient. Usually not, but 4 is the number that they have found to cause you to be predisposed to some type of illness. Now, of all of these, we can change everyone except for 2. And when I say 2, I'm a little hesitant to say 2. I'll say 1.5. Now, genes. Now, can we change our genes? You know what? Up until a decade ago, we thought that the genes were fixed, that we could never change our genes. Now, there are certain things that are hardwired in. You know, you can't change the color of your eyes, you can't change the color of your hair, you can't do that. But you can change what is called the expression of your genes. And it's called epigenetics, and it's a very fascinating field. You can be predisposed to having some type of illness, but in the right environment, you can turn off those genes, or in the wrong environment, you will turn on those genes. So epigenetics, and we'll talk a little more about that tomorrow. So we do have some influence on our genes. Development, you know, what happens to us in life, we can't change that. Now, what is going on in the brain when it comes to depression? And what research has found in the past, they said, well, you have a change in your chemistry. And that's true, but it's a little more involved than that. We have a lot of different circuits in the brain. And we have over 100 billion nerve cells. And some of those nerve cells are wired to areas in the brain that are involved in memory, that are involved in mood. And what happens is that there is a malfunction in those circuits. And there's also a malfunction in the chemistry, the neurochemistry. And we'll look a little bit more at that later on. So what are the signs of depression? Well, deep sadness, anxiety, empty mood, apathy, loss of pleasure, and that's called anhedonia. Now, anhedonia, you know, we all love, you know, there are certain things that we really love to do. We take pleasure in. And a person that is depressed, they lose pleasure in things that they found enjoyable earlier. So that's one of the major signs. Agitation, restlessness, irritability, sleep disturbances, changes in appetite. You might eat more or you might eat less. Your weight might go up, it might go down. lack of concentration, poor decision making, feelings of worthlessness. And that's a real big one in individuals who are depressed. They ruminate and feel that their lives are, without cause. They feel empty. Also fatigue, decreased energy, morbid thoughts, and suicide and death in many patients. Oftentimes depressed people have thoughts of suicide. Okay, current treatment. So what do we do for these diseases, for major depression? Psychotherapy, that's a big one, and antidepressants. Now, as you will see, these therapies they are effective in some individuals. When we look at antidepressants, it only helps 30% of patients that are taking those drugs. So that means that 70% of people who are taking antidepressants, it really isn't effective. Psychotherapy, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later, but those are the two main treatments. There has been a rapid increase in the amount of medications for antidepressants. People have been taking more. Now, here on the left, the lady is asking, "Are you on Twitter?" And she says, "No, I'm on Prozac." Now, do you guys remember when Prozac came out back in the 80s? Everybody was on Prozac. Commercials were everywhere. And people were, it was just like it was a radical change. Now, my depression had left by that time. But when I heard all of those stories, I thought, well, maybe I need some Prozac. It can improve my mood too. We always want to feel the best that we can feel. But Prozac was a big one, and it is what they call the SSRI. And it has, what happens is that in the brain cells, with the chemicals that are flowing through, the thought is that there's not enough serotonin. So what it does, it stays in the synapses of the nerves longer so that you will have that feel-good feeling. Now here it says between 1988 and 1994, and between 2007 and 2010, among adults aged 18 and over, the use of antidepressants increased more than fourfold, from 2.4 to 10%. That's a big increase. And we are becoming more and more depressed. But the question is, why? Why are we so depressed? What is going on? 1 in 10 people in the United States take antidepressants. Now, if you were here last night, right at the end of the seminar, I said half of Americans are on antidepressants. That was a misstatement. And so, if you're not taking antidepressants and you were here last night, you probably said, well, I'm not on it, I guess she's on it. But it's 1 in 10, 1 in 10. So, it's skyrocketed, there's a 400% increase in antidepressants. Now, let me just go back here. This is a person, Charles Ratson. He's a mental health expert, and this is what he says. The rate of antidepressant use has skyrocketed nearly 400% in the United States since the late 80s, when the first SSRIs, that's the Prozac, the Zoloft, those type of medications, went on the market. There is lots of evidence that rates of depression have doubled from the late 90s to late 2000. And that's what he says. And just talks a little bit about where he's from. And then it goes on to say that the precise reason for the uptake probably, in depression are unclear. There is evidence to suggest poor diets and a lack of aerobic exercise may play a pivotal role. We know obesity is a risk factor for depression. And he points out that studies suggest eating processed foods and social isolation can lead to depression. Our lifestyle, what we are doing that we don't even think about, contributes to depression. Suicide. Now, suicide is the 10th leading cause of death in the United States. And worldwide, over 700,000 people take their lives. That's sad. Over 7,000. In the United States, it's 400,000, I believe, 440,000 that take their lives here in the United States. Now, what is the cause? Now, if I take this wall, and if I just start bang, 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 banging my head against the wall, what's going to happen? I'm going to have a headache. But what caused my headache? Banging against the wall. So, what am I going to do? You know, my head is hurting. I need to stop banging my head against the wall and take me some Motrin, some Advil, and that'll help. Okay, that should help. But then I need to have my head examined. Why am I banging my head against the wall anyway? That's the question too. The point I want to make is, if we keep doing the same thing and we're getting the same results, we need to change. So, if I stop banging my head against the wall, my headache will go away, and I will not need to take the Advil or the Tylenol. If we get to the root cause of what's causing our depression, we won't need to take the medication in most instances. Now, some people, they might have to be on medications. There's a doctor at an institute in Weimar, California, and he has a depression clinic, and they run that clinic for, I think it's about 2 weeks, and people go there from all over the world to learn principles about depression and how to become depression-free. People who have been depressed for years, and he has a 90% success rate with those individuals that are implementing the program that he has. So getting to the root cause, our genes, we have influence over our genes. Development, we can't change that. But lifestyle, circadian rhythms, addictions, nutrition, toxins, social support, and medications, medical conditions, and frontal lobe, there are things that we can definitely change. So let's look at genetic expression and development. And I mentioned this a little earlier, mom, dad get together, we have their genes, and they pass on information to us. Now, lifestyle. When they look at twins, identical twins in the same environment, one might become depressed and the other one might not. So why is that? They're identical, but one gene is turned on and the other gene is not. What they have found is events that happens to that person in their lives can trigger that gene to turn on. Diet can, some type of emotional abuse can, other things such as not getting your sleep, addictions, all of those can turn on those genes. So genetic expression. Lifestyle. Okay, exercise. Exercise is a big one. Exercise, and I put IT because IT stands for interval training. Have you heard of interval training? That's when you're moving really fast for a few minutes and then you stop. You're moving really fast for a few minutes and you stop. You're getting your heart rate up and your heart rate down. Exercise has been shown to be even more effective than some antidepressants. Isn't that amazing? They have done studies to show. Now, why would exercise help with depression? When we exercise, we're releasing those feel-good hormones. You've heard of feel-good hormones? Anybody? Yeah, what's the name? Huh? We have serotonin, also endorphins, and enkephalins. Now, enkephalins are those pain medications. When we exercise, we release a natural pain medication similar to morphine. And those endorphins, those feel-good hormones. So these are some of the interventions that we can use to help with our depression. There was a study done by Harvard, and they looked at exercise. And it says a review of studies stretching back to 1981 concluded that regular exercise can improve mood in people with mild to moderate depression. It also may play a supporting role in treating severe depression. One group took part in an aerobic exercise program, another took SSRI, which is Zoloft, and also Prozac, and a third did both. At the 16-week mark, depression had eased in all three groups. About 60 to 70% of the people in all three groups can no longer be classified or classed as having major depression. In fact, group scores on two rating scales of depression were essentially the same. This suggests that for those people who need or wish to avoid drugs, exercise might be an acceptable substitute for antidepressants. Isn't that amazing? Now, this is a study from Harvard. A follow-up to this study said that a follow-up to that study found that exercise effects lasted longer than those on antidepressants. Just simple exercise. And you don't really need to have vigorous exercise. 4 times a week, 30 minutes is effective. And so just choose the type of exercise that you like, because if you don't like it, you're not going to enjoy it. Also, and we talked about this, the endorphins and the enkephalins, exercise does something else that's really important. It releases a chemical called BDNF. And you want BDNF. It's some good stuff for your brain. It's a protein. And this protein builds nerve cells. Now, when we're stressed out, we produce a lot of cortisol. And cortisol is really bad. That's, cortisol is, people who have asthma, they're taking steroids, that's what cortisol is. When we have a lot, it kills brain cells. When we exercise, this hormone, which is a protein, it neutralizes the effects of that cortisol. So exercise is also good for BDNF release. It stimulates what is called neurogenesis. Now, neurogenesis is nerve cells. It actually grows new nerve cells. Now, we have, as I said, 100 billion nerve cells. And we cannot grow anymore. But when we exercise, it naturally stimulates the growth of nerve cells. That's the only way that it can happen. Circadian rhythms. Now, we have a rhythm to our body, a time that we wake up, a time that we go to sleep. We also have fluctuations with our temperature. And so many people who are shift workers, individuals who travel and have jet lag, going through different time zones, it really throws the circadian rhythms off. And so that can lead to depression. So for individuals who are having problems with regulating their rhythms, what they need to do is go to bed at a certain time and wake up every day at the same time. Your circadian rhythms are regulated by sunlight. You know, when you wake up in the morning, or, I wake up automatically early in the morning, get up, about 5 o'clock. But if I sleep in late, I don't feel as good because my body is used to waking up at a certain time. And so if I wake up later, I'm throwing my circadian rhythm off. And how this works is, at night, we release what is called melatonin. Are you familiar with melatonin? Everyone's familiar with melatonin? Well, it is a natural hormone that's produced in the pineal gland of the brain, and it is wonderful because it is what allows us to fall into sleep at night, and it's released around 9 o'clock at night. And so if you go to bed too late, well, guess what? You miss out on the early benefits of that hormone because it peaks around 2 o'clock in the morning. So in order for us to have melatonin released at night, we need to have sunshine during the day, because sunshine, when we have sunshine, it allows serotonin, and that's the feel-good hormone, to be released. So there's a balance. So in order for us to have a balance in our circadian rhythms, we need to have regularity, going to bed at a certain time and getting up at a certain time. Okay? Now, sunlight. Sunlight is important. There are a lot of people who have seasonal depression. Many people who live in areas where they don't get a lot of sun during the day, their moods tend to be somewhat depressed. And the lack of sunlight can also cause problems with depression. Now, for individuals who have problems regulating their circadian rhythms, we have what is called light therapy. And on the left here, there's a lady sitting right in front of the light. And what happens is, when you look at this light, for about 30 minutes, it increases your serotonin levels. And that's for individuals that are having severe sleeping problems. It's important to get up every day at the same time, 365 days a year, in order to stimulate your circadian rhythms. Okay, nutrition. Nutrition is one area that is often overlooked. And individuals that are suffering from depression, they have usually low levels of B6 and B12. These are vitamins B6 and B12. Usually there are low levels of tryptophan. And in order to make that feel-good hormone, serotonin, you have to have tryptophan. And then low omega-3 fatty acids. Junk food, we talked about junk food last night, sugar, anything that's white flour, processed, artificial flavors. These are bad for all of us, but especially for those that are suffering from depression. So these are some foods that are high in B6, B12, also folic acid, and omega-3. Lentils, sunflower seeds, pumpkin seeds, sesame seeds. This is supposed to be black-eyed peas. So overlook that, please. Pinto beans, navy beans, kidney beans. And as you can see, these are